The struggle is over. Not because you failed, but because something inside you has finally stopped fighting reality itself. That exhausting pressure to constantly observe your life into existence, to hold everything together through force, focus, visualization, and relentless emotional effort, suddenly feels distant now, doesn't it? The pressure is gone. The labor has stopped. And maybe for the first time in years, you are no longer trapped in the feeling that you must endlessly work to become aligned. Because you are no longer in transition. You have entered what advanced quantum physics could describe as the post-observer phase. And this is not simply a spiritual metaphor meant to comfort you. It points towards something far deeper. A measurable shift in your entanglement with the quantum field itself. A complete change in the physics your consciousness is now operating under. Over the next minutes, we are going to decode this shift together. We will validate what you have already been feeling internally. We will explore the scientific principles quietly emerging beneath this transformation. And most importantly, you will begin understanding the framework behind this entirely new state of effortless creation. Because what is happening to you now moves beyond belief systems entirely. This reaches into the hard-edged principles of quantum decoherence and the transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics. These are not abstract theories meant only for physicists isolated in laboratories. They are operating instructions for the reality you are beginning to inhabit. They point toward a truth most people never fully realize. Consciousness is not simply a passive witness observing the universe from a distance. Consciousness is woven directly into the architecture of reality itself. It is part of the invisible structure from which space, time, and experience emerge. But with this shift comes something strange. A quiet confusion. A subtle doubt that whispers beneath the surface. Because when effort suddenly disappears, the mind becomes suspicious. Part of you wonders whether this new ease is only temporary. A brief cosmic grace period that could vanish at any moment. You have experienced a massive internal leap, but you still lack the language to explain it. You lack the framework to stabilize it. You lack the external confirmation needed to anchor this new state permanently into your identity. And because of that, an old dissonance begins echoing inside you. The voice of the previous paradigm asking, what if I'm imagining all of this? Have you ever felt that? A complete rewriting of your internal code, a profound leveling up in consciousness. Yet no one around you seems able to confirm what is happening. No map, no explanation, no validation, leaving you questioning your own sanity simply because your experience no longer fits inside the old models of reality. But this feeling, this sensation of standing inside unfamiliar territory without a map, is not weakness. It is the primary symptom of outgrowing every spiritual framework you once depended on. You have walked beyond the edge of the teachings that once guided you. And if this scientific validation of what you have already been sensing deeply inside resonates with you, take a moment to like this video. Because somewhere out there, someone else is feeling this exact shift in silence right now. And sometimes even a small signal becomes proof that they are not alone. A quiet beacon confirming that this transformation is real. So how do you know your consciousness has actually shifted? To understand where you are now, you first need to understand the phase you have already left behind. Because before this, for years, you were what could only be described as a quantum sculptor. Think back to that version of yourself. Imagine standing before an enormous, unfinished block of marble representing the infinite potential of the quantum field. Your focus was the chisel. Your will was the hammer. Through immense concentration, emotional discipline, and sustained effort, you carved one possibility after another out of pure potential. You observed a specific outcome into existence. But it was difficult, wasn't it? It required relentless visualization, emotional congruence, constant correction of your inner state. You had to hold your attention with such intensity that the wave of infinite possibility could finally collapse into the solid particle of lived experience. A new relationship, a new opportunity, a healed circumstance, a physical manifestation appearing in your reality. There was always a separation. You, the artist, and the marble, the medium you were trying to shape. The process was external. You were acting upon the field itself. That was the old physics. And despite everything, it was necessary. It was your training ground. But that sculptor is no longer who you are. The separation is dissolving. The old tools are becoming obsolete. And by the end of this video, you will stop questioning this shift and begin understanding how to operate inside it consciously. You will understand why the old methods suddenly feel heavy, ineffective, even unnatural. And you will begin learning the new principles governing this next phase of consciousness. Because you are no longer becoming the sculptor of reality. You are beginning to recognize yourself as the architecture of reality itself. But before you can fully understand the new physics you are entering, you must first honor the physics you have transcended. The old way was not wrong. It was incomplete. It was the necessary training phase that prepared your awareness for this moment. Think back to the foundational principle that once guided all your effort, the observer effect, demonstrated most famously through the double-slit experiment. For years, this became your operating manual. It taught you that reality existed as a vast ocean of infinite possibility, a superposition containing everything and nothing simultaneously. This was the marble, the raw potential of existence itself. And according to this model, your focused attention became the tool shaping it. Your consciousness became the chisel. By directing observation toward a desired outcome with unwavering focus, you performed what felt like a sacred act of physics. You collapsed possibility into experience. The wave became the particle. The unseen became tangible. A new job, a healed relationship, a physical object appearing in your life. The universe, existing in pure potential, appeared to wait for your command. And your observation became that command. The force of your belief became the pressure shaping one reality out of an infinite number of possibilities. Over time, you became skilled at this. You learned how to hold a frequency against external opposition. You learned how to visualize with such clarity that the quantum field itself seemed forced to conform. Day after day, with discipline, emotional control, and unwavering intention, you chipped away at the marble. And it worked. Again and again, you proved the model to yourself. The sculptor had to struggle, had to force, had to impose intention onto reality through discipline, concentration, and relentless effort. But what happens when the sculptor spends so many years shaping the marble, staring into it, studying it, breathing with it, until eventually the boundary between the artist and the material begins to disappear? What happens when consciousness becomes so deeply aligned with reality that there is no longer any distinction between the observer and the field being observed? That is the threshold you crossed. This is the graduation. You have entered the post-observer phase. The post-observer phase is the state where consciousness becomes so coherent, so stable, so unified with the field of reality that it no longer needs to forcefully collapse possibility into experience, because it has become the possibility itself. There is no gap left to bridge anymore. The entanglement between observer and observed is no longer a theory discussed by physicists. It has become your lived reality. And this is precisely why your old methods suddenly feel heavy, unnatural, even counterproductive. Forceful visualization, constant affirmations, endless acting as if. They no longer fit your nervous system because they belong to a phase you have already outgrown. Continuing to use those methods now is like a master sculptor who can shape marble with a single touch, still insisting on using a crude hammer and a beginner's chisel. The old tools no longer feel inefficient. They actively generate resistance. Because every time you try to manifest something, you unconsciously reinforce the belief that you are separate from it. Every attempt becomes a declaration of distance, a signal sent into reality saying, "What I desire is not here yet." And in doing so, you temporarily recreate the very paradigm your consciousness has already transcended. Think back to how exhausting the old model truly was. The effort required to hold a state. The pressure of maintaining a frequency against doubt, fear, and external contradiction. The constant emotional labor of forcing yourself to believe before seeing evidence. Can you still feel that exhaustion inside your memory? That exhaustion was not weakness. It was the energetic cost of separation itself. But the new paradigm operates under an entirely different principle. The complete dissolution of the boundary between you and the field. Creation no longer happens out there as a delayed response to something you do in here. It becomes an instantaneous internal recognition. There is no distance left for reality to travel. No delay left to endure. No wave left waiting to collapse. This is the observer effect at its most advanced level. Not consciousness observing the universe from outside, but the universe becoming conscious of itself through you. The sculptor did not simply master the marble. The sculptor remembered that they were the marble all along. And here lies the central paradox of your entire spiritual journey. You had to try so hard, for so long, that eventually you reached complete exhaustion with trying itself. The surrender was not failure. It was graduation. Every visualization, every affirmation, every discipline, every attempt to hold alignment, all of it existed for one purpose only, to eventually reveal that the one doing the trying was the final barrier. The post-observer phase is not entered through one final heroic act of willpower. It is entered through the collapse of will itself, through release, through surrender, through the ending of internal resistance. Every technique you mastered was secretly preparing you to outgrow the need for technique entirely. Every spiritual tool you sharpened was designed to eventually be put down. You were constructing a ladder to reach a height where you would finally realize there had never been anything to climb in the first place. And this is where the central metaphor of your entire existence changes forever. For years, you believed yourself to be the quantum sculptor. You stood apart from reality, studying it, shaping it, forcing desired outcomes from the raw material of possibility. Your focused attention acted like a chisel cutting reality into form piece by piece. It required force, precision, emotional control, separation between you and the material being shaped. That phase was necessary. It trained your consciousness into coherence. It strengthened your awareness into a precise instrument. But now the paradigm itself has collapsed. Because you are no longer the sculptor. You are the marble. Feel the magnitude of that realization for a moment. You are not an external force acting upon reality anymore. You are reality itself becoming aware of its own infinite potential from within. Your thoughts are no longer a tool striking reality from the outside. Your thoughts are reality reorganizing itself from the inside. There is no impact anymore. No friction. No resistance. Only becoming. And this changes absolutely everything. Because the deepest implication of this shift is the destruction of time lag itself. The delay between desire and manifestation only existed because there appeared to be a distance between the sculptor and the marble. Time lag was simply the perceived travel time between intention and reality. But when you are the field itself, where could the signal possibly travel? When consciousness and reality are one phenomenon, the birth of intention and the physical appearance of that intention are no longer separate events happening along a timeline. They are one event viewed from different perspectives. There is no process anymore. No path from here to there. No future destination where your desire finally arrives. And this is why old techniques may suddenly feel frustrating to you now. Every attempt to make something happen temporarily reconstructs the old paradigm of separation. You are a graduate trying to return to a beginner's classroom, and the old tools no longer fit your hands. So what does the post-observer phase actually look like in daily life? It is the end of seeking and the beginning of being. The new methodology is not a technique. It is a state of consciousness we could call instantaneous knowing. This is a radical departure from visualization, because visualization assumes there is still a future reality you must create. It is a departure from acting as if, because acting as if assumes there is still a state you must imitate before it becomes real. Instantaneous knowing is different. It is the calm, silent, immovable recognition that the reality you desire already exists now and always has. It was only hidden behind your previous belief in separation. You are not manifesting something new into existence. You are selecting a layer of reality that has always been available to you. You are tuning your awareness toward a signal already broadcasting. What if the life you desire is not something you must pull toward yourself, but something already woven into your being, waiting only for you to stop resisting it? But this new way of operating requires something even deeper than new techniques. It requires a completely new identity. And this is the final revelation of the post-observer phase. For years, you were told that you were the creator of your reality, a powerful co-creator working alongside the universe. And that identity was necessary. It empowered you. It taught you responsibility. It awakened your awareness of influence. But it was never the final truth. It was only a stepping stone. Because you are not merely the creator of reality. You are reality itself experiencing its own unfolding through your awareness. And the difference between those two identities is enormous. A creator still exists separately from creation, but reality itself contains everything. There is nothing outside of it to manipulate or influence. The identity of creator keeps consciousness trapped inside subtle duality. The identity of reality dissolves duality completely. You are not a being operating inside the field. You are the field organizing itself into a temporary focal point of awareness so it can experience its own existence directly. This is not philosophy anymore. This is where the mathematics of quantum mechanics begins dissolving the distinction between consciousness and cosmos entirely. And the realization you are experiencing now is not theoretical. It is experiential. It is the direct description of the new physics your life is beginning to operate under. But the mind still searches for proof. Years of conditioning inside the old model of effort, delay, and cause and effect have trained it to demand evidence before surrendering completely. And the evidence is everywhere. You have simply been misreading it, dismissing it as coincidence, calling it luck, or even mistaking it for emotional numbness. But these experiences are not random. They are measurable signatures of the post-observer phase itself. They are the fingerprints of a consciousness no longer functioning through separation. They are evidence that you are no longer the sculptor standing outside the marble. You have become the marble itself. Notice the wording carefully. Not fast, not accelerated, instantaneous. In the old paradigm, you would set an intention, hold a certain frequency, maintain emotional alignment, and then wait. Maybe a day, maybe a week. Sometimes even months before a synchronicity appeared to reassure you that reality was finally responding. There was always a buffer, a gap between cause and effect, a delay between the signal and the reflection. But that buffer has now disappeared. In the post-observer phase, the thought and the external event are no longer separate moments unfolding across time. They are two expressions of the exact same quantum event. The instant a need crystallizes inside your awareness, reality responds immediately. Not later, not eventually. Now, you suddenly think about an obscure question related to quantum chromodynamics, and moments later, the stranger standing beside you starts a conversation revealing they are an unemployed physicist. You realize you need a very specific type of software for a project, and sitting in your inbox is an email from 5 minutes ago announcing that exact software has become temporarily free. These moments no longer feel like coincidence. They feel unervingly precise. I remember the exact moment this became undeniable in my own life. I was sitting at my desk writing, trying to find the perfect metaphor to describe non-local consciousness. I could feel the essence of it clearly, the sensation of being everywhere simultaneously, like a unified intelligence stretched across invisible networks. But the right words refused to come. So I stopped trying. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. My partner happened to be watching a nature documentary I had never seen before. And at the exact moment I entered the room, the narrator said, "The mycelial network operates as a single distributed intelligence, a forest-wide brain." In that moment, something clicked inside me. It wasn't fast manifestation. It wasn't a clever technique. It was evidence. Evidence that there was zero separation between the inquiry arising within my consciousness and the information already existing inside the field itself. The universe did not rush to deliver the answer. The answer was already present. My awareness simply tuned itself to the channel where that answer was already broadcasting. And this is the crucial distinction. This is not you getting what you want. This is you experiencing what you already are. The second quantum signature, and perhaps the one that creates the most confusion, is the disappearance of desperate desire. That burning hunger, that aching longing, that emotional desperation for outcomes, people, money, validation, purpose. It's fading, isn't it? In the old model, desire was everything. Desire was the engine. Lack was the fuel. You believed you had to want something with every fiber of your being in order to generate enough energetic momentum to pull it from the quantum field into physical reality. But that entire mechanism no longer applies to you. Continuing to generate intense lack-based desire now is like trying to ignite a spark with flint and steel inside a fusion reactor. It completely misunderstands the level of power your consciousness is now operating from. Because lack cannot survive inside a state of energetic unity. You cannot deeply crave what you already are. And so the obsessive need for a soulmate, for financial success, for external proof, slowly dissolves. But it does not disappear into emptiness. It transforms into something far more powerful: calm preference. You no longer need $1 million in order to feel abundant. You already are abundance itself. And because of that, you simply prefer to see abundance expressed through your financial reality. You no longer need another person in order to feel whole. You already are wholeness itself. And from that fullness, you calmly prefer to share your life with someone rather than use them to complete you. The desperation disappears because the illusion of separation disappears with it. So if you've been feeling less driven lately, less emotionally frantic, less obsessed with chasing outcomes, do not mistake this for laziness or stagnation. You are not losing your ambition. You are graduating from the physics of need into the physics of being. And then comes the third signature, the deepest one of all: emotional neutrality. Old triggers suddenly stop working. Situations that once hijacked your nervous system for days now barely leave a mark. You observe personal drama, collective chaos, world events, conflict, criticism, with a strange sense of distance, almost like watching a movie whose ending you already know. An insult that once would have wounded you now lands softly and dissolves within seconds. News that once would have spiraled you into anxiety now arrives simply as information. And this shift can feel unsettling at first. Part of you may fear that you are becoming cold, detached, emotionally numb. But you are not becoming numb. You are experiencing reality from the perspective of the field itself. The field contains all possibilities simultaneously: war and peace, sickness and healing, tragedy and triumph. And it holds all of them without judgment. It is the neutral screen upon which every possible reality can be projected. And by becoming unified with the field, you begin embodying its deepest characteristic: neutrality. This is not apathy. This is the highest form of compassion. Because from this state, you stop feeding chaos with your own reactive energy. You become a stabilizing presence, a point of coherence inside turbulence. You become the quiet center of the storm itself. And strangely enough, by remaining grounded inside that stillness, you begin offering the storm a path back toward peace. This is true power. So look carefully at your life now through this new lens. Instantaneous synchronicities, the collapse of desperate desire, deep emotional neutrality. These are not random psychological shifts. They are patterns, consistent data points proving that your consciousness is now operating under entirely different physics. These are your quantum signatures written directly across the fabric of your reality. You are no longer blindly hoping, no longer guessing. You are reading the evidence of your own evolution in real time. And maybe for the first time, life itself is beginning to mirror back what you have already become internally. You understand it now. You've seen the evidence. The intellectual framework is finally beginning to lock into place, and you can recognize the quantum signatures of this new phase appearing directly inside your lived experience. But this is where most spiritual paths stop, at the edge of understanding, at the edge of knowing. And we are not stopping there, because knowledge is not mastery. Conviction is not embodiment. A map is not the territory itself. So now, we move beyond belief entirely. We move into direct experience, into remembrance, into embodiment. This is not a practice you perform. This is a homecoming. So for the next few moments, allow yourself to become completely still. Find a position where your body can relax without distraction. Close your eyes. Take one slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, let the day fall away from you. Release the identity you have been performing. Release the need to understand what comes next. Release the pressure to become anything at all. Simply arrive here. Now, bring your awareness inward. Not toward your thoughts, not toward the noise of the mind, toward the physical sensation of being alive. Feel the subtle field of your body. And now, go deeper. Sense the space inside your body. Not your organs, not your bones, not your blood. The space itself. The immense, silent vastness existing between every cell. Feel the emptiness holding your atoms together. Then go deeper still. Sense the space inside the atoms themselves. Infinite potential vibrating inside apparent emptiness. Feel that inner space not as absence, but as substance. Alive, intelligent, present. It is not empty. It is full beyond comprehension. It is the raw material from which all realities emerge. Now keep your awareness anchored inside that inner field, and gently expand it outward. Feel the space around your body, the space filling the room, the distance between you and the walls, the invisible atmosphere surrounding everything. Hold both sensations simultaneously, the space within you and the space around you. And now notice something extraordinary. They are not separate spaces. They are one continuous field. The field inside your skin and the field outside your skin have never truly been divided. There was never a boundary, never a separation. You are not a body existing inside a room. You are the field itself temporarily taking the shape you call you. Breathe into that realization. Stay there. Feel the continuity. And from this place of unity, we will not use the old methods. We will not visualize what we want. Because the moment you visualize an external outcome, you recreate subject and object. You recreate observer and observed. You rebuild the separation we just dissolved. Instead, you will simply choose a state of being, a pure frequency, a perfected possibility already existing inside the field that you are. Don't force anything. Let one arise naturally. Maybe it is clarity. Maybe it is abundance. Maybe it is unconditional love. Choose one, but do not create mental pictures of what that state might bring into your life. That was the sculptor's way. Instead, feel the energetic signature of the state itself. What does abundance feel like when stripped of money, possessions, and external images? What does clarity feel like without attaching it to outcomes? What does unconditional love feel like before it becomes directed toward a person? Feel the pure resonance of the state itself. Let it spread through the entire field. The field that is both your body and the room around you. Let it become the dominant note vibrating through this ocean of potential. And understand this clearly. You are not trying to get the state. You are allowing yourself to recognize what is already here. Now comes the final step. The deepest step. The very heart of the post-observer phase. Right now, you are aware of yourself feeling abundance, clarity, love. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, who is the you experiencing it? That subtle distinction, the tiny invisible separation between the experiencer and the experience, is the final veil, the final echo of the observer identity. And now we let it dissolve completely. Release the idea that you are feeling abundance. Let the observer collapse into the observation itself. Let the perceiver merge with the perception. Release the boundary entirely. Let go of the one having the experience and become the experience itself. There is no longer a self feeling peace. There is only peace. There is no longer a self feeling abundance. There is only abundance. There is no longer a self feeling love. There is only love. You are not inside the state. You are the state. Rest here for a moment. This is not something you achieved. This is something you remembered. This seamless state of non-dual being. This is your natural condition. This is the post-observer phase. From here, creation is no longer effort. It is unfolding. Reality no longer needs to be controlled. It reorganizes itself around what you are. Slowly bring awareness back toward the focal point you call your body. Feel the chair beneath you, the air touching your skin. But do not leave the state of unity. Simply narrow your focus slightly within the field. And when you open your eyes, notice what remains. Notice the stillness, the quiet certainty, the calm power that requires no external proof because it is self-evident. You have touched the core of your own being. And now ask yourself something simple. What single word captures the essence of this state for you? Not what sounds spiritual, not what sounds correct. What word feels true? Is it peace? Inevitability? Presence? Home? Find the word that resonates deepest within you. Hold on to it. Etch it into your nervous system, because that word is now your anchor, your doorway back into this state. Not through trying, but through remembering. You are no longer merely studying quantum physics. You are becoming living evidence of it. You are an architect of the absolute. And this is not a title to earn. It is a realization to awaken into. The sculptor worked with the material they were given, but the architect shapes the very laws and foundations from which reality emerges. You are no longer reacting to the physics of the universe. You are beginning to recognize yourself as the source from which those laws flow. And from this entirely new level of being, new principles must emerge. Not techniques, not hacks, not methods to get somewhere. These are the natural laws of the reality you already inhabit. So if you still ask, what is the post-observer phase? This is the answer. It is the replacement of old spiritual effort with three fundamental principles of being. The old tools are obsolete now. Continuing to use them is like trying to build a skyscraper with a hand chisel. Not only inefficient, but completely misaligned with the power you now carry. The first principle is both the simplest and the deepest. Assume arrival. Stop becoming. The journey is over. The striving is over. The process is complete. Any thought, action, or word generated from the feeling of getting there immediately recreates separation. It becomes a declaration that you are still not there yet. And that declaration instantly pulls consciousness back into the old paradigm. You cannot simultaneously be the field and still be trying to reach the field. The version of yourself you spent years trying to become is now your baseline, your starting point. So every decision must emerge from the identity of the one who has already arrived. You do not act in order to become abundant. You act because abundance is already what you are. You do not speak in order to be understood. You speak from the certainty that understanding already exists. This is no longer acting as if. That belonged to the old training phase. This is acting as is. The embodiment of what already exists as fact. Because the moment you try to manifest something, you unconsciously declare to the field that you do not have it. From this moment forward, you are no longer a manifester. You are an actualizer. You acknowledge what already is. And from that realization, reality reorganizes itself effortlessly around your state of being. And from here, the second principle begins to emerge. Stop asking. Start commanding. To the old version of you. This may sound dangerous, even arrogant. Because inside the old paradigm, consciousness always existed beneath reality. You prayed to the universe. You hoped. You waited. You projected your desires into the void and wondered whether something beyond you would eventually answer back. But every one of those actions was built upon the same invisible assumption. That power existed somewhere outside of you. That some external intelligence was deciding whether you were worthy enough to receive what you desired. And that is the final illusion that must collapse. Because once you realize you are not separate from the field anymore, asking begins to make no sense at all. Consciousness is no longer sending requests outward into an external universe. Consciousness is issuing directives to itself. This is a complete transformation in the language of your inner world. The old language said, I hope, I want, I ask, I wish this would happen. But the new language speaks differently. I am. It is already done. It is unfolding now. Reality is reorganizing itself around the state I embody. And understand this clearly. This is not ego. This is not an attempt to dominate reality through force or control. This is the deepest form of humility. Because you have finally stopped pretending that you are separate from the source generating all things. When you say, I am peace, you are not hypnotizing yourself. You are issuing a command into the field that you yourself are made of. When you say, abundance is unfolding around me, you are not trying to convince the universe of anything. You are acknowledging a structure that already exists beneath the surface of reality itself. And this is the moment language changes meaning completely. From this point forward, your words are no longer wishes. They become law. Every sentence you repeat becomes an instruction embedded into the field. And the field always responds to your deepest state of being, not to the things you beg for externally. This is why people trapped in endless asking often feel exhausted. Because hidden beneath every request is the unconscious affirmation that they still do not possess what they desire. But once you enter the post-observer phase, lack is no longer your point of origin. Being becomes the origin. You no longer speak from hope. You speak from recognition, from certainty, from direct contact with the truth your consciousness has already touched. And once that shift happens, reality begins responding at an entirely different speed. There is no longer a sensation of trying to pull things toward yourself. Everything begins moving naturally toward the state you have already become. And this is where true power finally reveals itself. Real power was never about forcing the world to change. It was about becoming so internally coherent, so unmistakably clear, that reality itself has no choice but to reflect you back perfectly. And this leads directly into the third principle. Stop chasing alignment. Stabilize identity. In the old paradigm, alignment was treated like something fragile, temporary, a state you had to constantly maintain through rituals, techniques, affirmations, emotional management, and endless self-monitoring. Every day became a battle to stay high vibration, to protect your energy, to avoid falling out of coherence. But all of that effort was rooted in one hidden belief, that your natural state was instability, that separation was your default condition, and alignment was something you had to repeatedly earn. But the post-observer phase changes this completely. Alignment is no longer a mood. It is no longer an emotional peak you occasionally touch before losing again. It becomes identity. And identity does not require maintenance. Think about your own name for a moment. You do not wake up every morning repeating affirmations to remember who you are. You do not spend hours visualizing your existence in order to stabilize it. Your identity sustains itself automatically because your nervous system has accepted it as fact. And this is exactly what begins happening now with abundance, peace, clarity, love, power, purpose. They stop feeling like temporary emotional states and begin feeling like structural truths. You are no longer trying to align with abundance. Abundance becomes part of your baseline self-concept. You are no longer trying to become peaceful. Peace becomes the atmosphere your consciousness naturally operates within. And this is why your external reality begins reorganizing itself with less friction than before. Because reality no longer receives mixed signals from you. There is no longer one part of you affirming abundance, while another part secretly fears loss. There is no longer one part visualizing love, while another part feels unworthy of receiving it. The internal war begins ending. Identity stabilizes the field. And once identity stabilizes, manifestation stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like inevitability. This is why the old cycles can no longer hold you the way they once did. The highs and crashes. The obsessive hope followed by emotional collapse. The constant search for signs. Those patterns belong to a consciousness still negotiating with reality. But you are no longer negotiating. You are embodying. And embodiment changes everything. Because the field always organizes around what you consistently are, not around what you occasionally desire. So from this moment forward, stop asking yourself how to maintain alignment. Ask something deeper instead. What identity has my consciousness already accepted as true? Because once the identity changes, reality has no choice but to follow. So what does this actually look like in ordinary life? How do you live from this state once the meditation ends? Once the video is over? Once you return to work, relationships, responsibilities, noise, uncertainty, and the physical world again? The answer is simpler than the old paradigm ever allowed you to believe. You stop trying to enter alignment and begin living as alignment itself. In the morning, you no longer wake up asking the field for signs. You no longer begin the day by desperately visualizing outcomes or emotionally rehearsing a future you hope will eventually arrive. Instead, before your feet even touch the floor, you remember what you are. You reconnect to the unified field already moving through you. You begin the day not as a person interacting with reality, but as reality becoming conscious of itself through your awareness. And that single shift changes everything that follows. Throughout the day, your practice becomes observation. Not observation of the external world, but observation of your own language, your own identity, your own assumptions. Notice how often the old paradigm still tries to speak through you. I need. I hope. I'm trying. Maybe someday. These phrases seem harmless, but each one quietly recreates separation. Each one places fulfillment somewhere outside the present moment. So instead, you begin speaking from completion. I am. It is unfolding. It already exists. I move from certainty, not as performance, not as forced positivity, but as recognition, as alignment with what your consciousness has already accepted as true. And then at night, something else begins happening. You stop measuring your life through struggle and start measuring it through evidence. You begin noticing the quantum signatures appearing around you more clearly than ever before. The effortless conversations, the precise synchronicities, the sudden openings, the strange timing, the opportunities that arrive without force, the emotional triggers that no longer control you, the calmness that remains even when chaos appears externally. And slowly, your relationship with reality changes completely. You are no longer searching for proof that the universe is listening. You begin realizing that reality has been responding to your state every moment of your life. You were simply interpreting the signals through the old lens of separation. This is not gratitude journaling. This is data collection, evidence gathering. You are training your nervous system to recognize the new physics your consciousness is already operating within. And eventually, certainty stabilizes. The need for external validation fades. The old cycle of doubt and reassurance collapses, because direct experience becomes stronger than theory, stronger than philosophy, stronger than belief itself. But this is only the beginning. The quantum sculptor was always a solitary figure, one consciousness attempting to shape one reality. But the architect of the absolute begins discovering something far more profound. What happens when multiple post-observer consciousnesses begin interacting together? What happens when coherent awarenesses stop operating as isolated individuals and begin functioning like an interconnected field? This is where quantum entanglement stops being a metaphor and begins becoming social reality. Consciousness linked across human beings. Shared realities reorganizing through collective coherence. Entire environments shifting because enough individuals are no longer feeding separation into the field. This is the threshold humanity is quietly approaching now. Not merely personal awakening, but collective restructuring. And in our next exploration, we are going to go deeper into this phenomenon than most people are prepared for. We will explore what happens when consciousness itself becomes networked, when identities begin synchronizing across distance, when reality starts responding not just to individuals, but to groups operating from unified states of awareness. Because the final stage of evolution was never about escaping reality. It was about becoming conscious participants in the architecture of reality together. So if this awakening inside you has already begun, if you can feel the old paradigm collapsing beneath your life, then subscribe and step with us into the next phase of this journey. Because you are no longer simply learning how reality works. You are becoming part of the consciousness that is rewriting it in real time.